Apple has managed to somehow do it once again. They continue to put out astonishing numbers, and that is what has led to today's 7.6% rise in the stock price. Year to date, the company is only down 12%, and while that may sound like a bad year, considering a time where the market overall, year to date, is down 18, SPY is doing not as good compared to Apple, the leading market cap in the world. Now, Apple did just come out with its earnings, and today's performance did help out the last 1 year, now being in the positive, and we're going to talk about why this stock is up. The reason is because this company just reported its earnings and it came in at stellar. The highlight here for Qualtrim says that, quote, Apple shares are trading higher after the company reported better than expected Q4 results and reported year-over-year revenue growth across multiple segments. We're going to talk about what those segments are, the direction that the company's going, and we're going to give a real-world example. Rather than talk all about numbers like I typically do, I want to give a real-world example because here it says why I'm entirely switching to Apple's ecosystem. Because what Apple really does is they don't sell the iPhone. They don't just sell a product or an array of products. They sell an entire ecosystem, both software, hardware, and applications that lead you to get hooked into their system, and they lead you so far astray from any other products or any other OS operating system that you basically get so hooked into the products that you will pay almost any price. And this is what leads Apple's ecosystem to be one of the most valuable, or I should say the most valuable in the entire world. So we're going to talk about Apple, everything about the company, the new update with this earnings report, and just overall the business in general. So it's going to be a fun one if you own the stock or if it's a company you intend to own in the next several months, and this is probably one for you. Keep in mind that if we go to my holdings here, it is not one that I currently own. I own 4 companies, which is Salesforce, Amazon, Crocs, and Google, so I do not own Apple stock. I'm not bullish, I'm not bearish. I will give you an unbiased third-party perspective of the company as someone who does not own the stock and will not have a bullish or bearish sentiment behind it. This is my honest-to-God, truthful answers, so it's going to be a fun one. Stay tuned, and without further ado, my name is Jordan. This is all the important charts I like to show, including my performance, holdings, balance in my portfolio, and as of today, my current balance is about $39,000, and here's my performance since joining this brokerage, and I like to share my performance and my portfolios down below in the description, which is shown here through my growth and dividend growth portfolio, and it will be the brokerage that we're highlighting today, which is M1 Finance. We've had 132 people sign up with M1 Finance so far. You get $10 just for getting signed up, and you'd help support me and the channel. So if you want to find out all stuff investing, if you want to see my investing related content, if you want to help me and my channel, you can do that down below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with it at Apple, and let's go ahead and take a dive into their products and services revenue. Now I could sit here and I could go line by line through all the numbers behind Apple, and we will do a brief overview, but rather than talk about the typical quantitative numbers-based research that I normally talk about, we'll go over that of course, but I want to talk about a qualitative. You can see that year over year their products revenue went up about $5 billion. You can see that their service revenue went up about $1 billion. And then their cost to actually make those iPhones didn't increase as much, so profitability increased, as you can probably guess. Apple is at record levels of revenue and profitability. Big shock. And I think it's because of stories like this. Christian wrote here in 2021, and I think this still applies today and likely many years into the future. Let's read over this article, and this gives you a real-world example of why Apple has such a lock-in for its customers. Diving deep into Apple's ecosystem, switching from Google to Apple. Up to this point, keep in mind before I start reading, he talks about how his wife was a die-hard Apple fan and how he was a Google and Android fan. He had never tried out the products until now, and here's what he had to write about it. Even after I decided to keep my new iPhone, I was still seeking comfort in Google apps and products. I uninstalled most of the apps from Apple and uninstalled all the apps used on my Android device. Apps like Chrome, Gmail, Google Notes, Google Calendar, YouTube Music, Google Podcasts, and so on. The fact that I relied on so many Google services tell me that I sought some kind of ecosystem from Google, an ecosystem that Google never managed to build the right way. It took me a few months to realize that most of Apple's apps were, in fact, superior to Google services, so I slowly but surely removed most of Google's apps from my iPhone and starting using the native solutions. I began to immerse myself into Apple's ecosystem, and you know what? It feels cozy. The next part says, lock me up in Apple's ecosystem. I don't mind. Ever since I bought my first Android smartphone, I sought complete compatibility between my devices. I even secretly hoped that Google would someday challenge Windows in terms of PC OS popularity popularity so we will finally have a complete ecosystem. In the end, I was constantly disappointed by Google developing new services while simultaneously closing other projects, some of which were reasonably good. I still miss Google Reader, and I was an early adopter and fan of Google Allo among others. The thing is, Google tried and failed to create an ecosystem similar to what Apple managed to achieve. I used to vilify Apple over how it locks everyone into the ecosystem, but I now realize that I want to be a part of that complete ecosystem. And then finally, he finishes out here with price, the only real downside. Everything Apple is relatively expensive. Everyone knows that. But if you have the money to spend on top Android flagship products and you do so every 2 years, you will probably have the money for a regular iPhone. Besides, Apple offers support and updates to its iPhones for up to 5 years. My wife's XR is still going strong and I don't see her letting go anytime soon. That phone is still as snappy as my iPhone 12. No point in changing something that still works and looks pretty much the same as newer models. So let's reiterate here. Let's get a summary of what we just read. He talked about switching from Google to Apple, and what it really was the ecosystem that he always thought that was lacking from Google, and he now found that with Apple. He said that he always sought a locked-in ecosystem from an OS operating system built behind hardware products that would obviously have great functionality and compatibility among devices, but the only downside was the price. Now the thing is, people who get locked into this typically have one negative downturn to locking into this ecosystem, like he does, which is the price. Now what does that mean when consumers are locked into something and the company continues to raise prices and get more and more revenue? It means that they have pricing power. Apple has incredible pricing power. They can price their iPhones at almost whatever they want and consumers will pay for it. The App Store has such a dominant share in the marketplace that they can price almost whatever they want for it, and app developers will pretty much just have to use it because the App Store is what gets the most traffic. It's what leads the free cash flow like this to be up 22% year over year, and the numbers to look so fantastic despite its incredible $2.5 trillion market cap. It's the largest company in the world by far, and it overtakes many competitors like a Google that are still over double in size. And so if you look at all their products, there are many different products that this company comes out with. They're always very well developed, very high model, great tech behind them. And it's not just the hardware. It's not just the software. It's hardware that is sold with its products. It's connected to its software infrastructure, and then applications and services are built beyond that, which fully locks you in. You don't just buy an iPhone and it stops there. You buy an Apple Watch, you buy a MacBook, you buy AirPods, you buy iPads, you buy all these different products, and then it leads you to developing into these different software, downloading into them and locking in all your information with Apple Pay and the Apple credit card and AirPlay and AirDrop and Apple Music and the iCloud and the Apple App Store, and it leads you to downloading all these different products and services, as you can see around the big circle here, and you get the point. Basically, when Apple locks you in its ecosystem, it has incredible pricing power over you, and it leads to the company to coming out with announcements like this that it did just in April of this year, about 6 months ago. Apple extends share buybacks by $90 billion as they raise their dividend as well. This is already a company that pays out quite a bit of money in dividends. If you look right now, they pay out about a quarter or so every single quarter. And you look at this shares outstanding currently sitting at 16 billion, you can see that the company is paying out tens of billions of dollars in dividends already, but it has an even more impressive share buyback program of $90 billion. 90 billion. Do you realize how insanely large that is? So many companies never even reach the size of 90 billion, and that's the size of Apple's share buyback. It's what's led their shares outstanding at the beginning of 2013, which was a little less than a decade ago, at 26 billion to go down and down and down every single quarter since then, and now we sit at right at about 16 billion. And if I were a big guesser, I would say that 90 days from now, when the next earnings report comes out, we'd probably drop below 16s and start to enter into the 15s, because the share buybacks don't seem to be stopping anytime soon. And last I checked, they're currently buying back around 15 billion of shares outstanding in the last quarter, every single quarter. And so while this company may be spending a lot on share buybacks, they still have a lot of cash on hand. They do have a lot of debt that has been increasing, which is a bit concerning, but they do have $100 billion in debt, but they still have plenty of cash on the balance sheet, still sitting at $48 billion, and cash shouldn't be a problem when free cash flow consistently comes at tens of billions of dollars a year. Last year, the free cash flow came in at a record-setting $114 $1 billion, is crazy it is to say, and so far they're on track to beat that. Like I said, in the most recent quarter, they just grew it 22.7%, sitting at $20.84 billion for the last quarter, and I think Apple's going to have a record-setting year. It doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon, and it makes sense that a company like this, while it may be a huge market cap, while growth has been slowing a little bit, it makes sense that the stellar earnings report doesn't seem to be stopping this company anytime soon. And so the longer you go out with Apple, generally speaking, it doesn't matter if you look at a month chart, this company could be anywhere. 3 month, 6 month, hell, even a year chart. It really doesn't matter what you look at. This company could be all over the place. But the longer you go out on a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year basis, the typical chart that you see for Apple is up and to the right, and that's it. So the 282% returns over the last 5 years has been great, not even factoring in dividends being reinvested. But generally speaking, I think Apple's going in the right direction. Maybe overvalued now, maybe undervalued, who knows? I don't really care. But generally speaking, long-term Apple investors are likely going to do well. Like I said, I don't own the stock now. I own 4 companies, and Apple's not one of them. So this is my unbiased take. I don't care if you buy it. I don't care if you sell it. I don't really have an opinion on it. The stock's been holding up well, and I hate to say it, but it should. The 4% returns we've seen in a 1-year basis, despite the recession, this company's putting up fantastic numbers, still growing as of the most recent quarter, 8.1%. So I think Apple deserves to be at these prices, and this is what I love about Apple stock. Thank you guys so much for watching. Check out all the stuff down below in the description. And without further ado, my name is Jordan. I'm a Millennial Investor, and I'll see you guys next time.